Bob, come up here for a second. I want to introduce you to this young man. I want you to welcome my friend, Bob Stromberg.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everybody. I did grow up in a church much different than this. My church that I grew up in would fit in this building, in this room. And I don't mean just the church. I mean the steeple, the parsonage, the parking lot, and the Tasty Freeze across the street. It would all fit comfortably in this area. The ball field right over there. It would all fit right in this room. But I'm thankful for that church and those people because I had the opportunity as a young boy, 5 or 6 years old, sitting around a Sunday school table with my two friends, Kurt and Phil. I had two friends. I had the opportunity that day to invite Christ into my heart. And I'm so thankful. I'm eternally thankful that I had that opportunity. However, there were some things about being a church kid that I did not particularly appreciate. And perhaps the greatest of these was the whole concept of the church pew. The pews in my church, I know this as an adult now, I don't think were actually designed to be sat in. It was a right angle kind of deal. In fact, I think the back tilted in just a little bit. And my mom and I used to gloss them up, shine them up just to a high gloss every Saturday night. It was her volunteer job, and I volunteered. Well, she made me help her do that. Hard maple. We would gloss those things up so you could see your face in the wood when we were done. In fact, when I was 4 or 5 years old, from a sitting position on Sunday morning, I could look right up my nose. I did that off. The problem is they were very, very slippery pews, especially for a kid in cotton pants. And so I tended to be uncomfortable, and I would fidget a lot, at which my mom would say, sit like a big boy. I knew how to sit like a big boy. If you're raised in the church, people, you know how to sit like a big boy or a big girl. Show me once how you sit like a big boy or a big girl. That's right, you sit with the big boys and big girls sit with their bottoms in the corner, their back straight, their knees out, and their legs dangling over the edge. But when I was 4 or 5, 6 years old, my legs were not long enough to dangle over the edge, and consequently that pew would catch me right in the bottom of my calf there, and after 4 or 5 minutes, I'm not sure exactly because time was different then, but I would start to feel, coming into my toes first and working their way toward my heels, I start to feel these stinglies. And the longer I sat there, they would get stinglier and stinglier, and then they would start to hum. There was a sermon going on. The guy was saying something that I wasn't paying attention because my feet were doing a duet, and this bothered me, so I would fidget, upon which my mom would say, sit like a big boy. I couldn't do it, and I used to look at all the adults. They weren't fidgeting. None of the adults were fidgeting. They were sitting, each one of them, moms and dads, in the exact same position, which I thought was a little bit odd. Every dad had his arm around the mom like this, or every mom had the arm in the husband's elbow like this, sitting just as still as could be. And I used to think, how can they stand these stinglies? How can they, do you outgrow them during puberty? What happens? Adults with stinglies. And now I know why they were sitting that way, because I've been back to that church now as an adult. I know why they were sitting like that. They were holding on. And the preacher would be preaching about stuff, and the guy shouldn't complain. I'm not complaining about the preacher, my goodness, but I didn't understand what he was talking about. Things like the Holy Spirit taking control of our souls. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I would sit there with these stinglies, and one day I had a revelation. And I remember this because I've not had a lot of revelations in my life. I've only had, well, just this one. I started to feel those stinglies coming into my feet right at the beginning of the sermon, and I thought to myself, you know, these stinglies only happen in here. Never at home have I had stinglies. Never at school have I had stinglies. Only in here. And then it was a revelation. I thought, that's it. If God's Holy Spirit wants to take control of my souls, what better way than right in through the top of my toes? I looked, my feet went completely dead. This scared me, so I scooted down. You didn't scoot down on those slippery pews, not in those pants. I got down a degree, maybe 2 degrees, lying on the floor, looking at those old brown hymnals and press pant legs and those funny old lady high heels. I mean, the ladies weren't, the heels were funny. So. And then again, the pastor, and again, I don't complain about the pastor. My goodness, especially him. He was an interim guy. You know what an interim pastor is. That's the guy who comes to serve your church for a short while you're waiting for your permanent pastor to come. He was our interim pastor for 6 years. Judgment was his favorite theme. He enjoyed judgment. Luke 12 was his favorite text. I remember this because he did a 6-year series on Luke 12. Some of you probably recall Luke 12 was the text where Jesus said primarily to his disciples, which are right down front, but they heard him clear in the back. Jesus said, one day all that you have hidden will be revealed. One day all that you have whispered in the inner ear behind closed doors will be shouted from the rooftop. One day all that you did in the dark places will be shown in the daylight. I didn't like this verse, even as a 5 or 6-year-old. Because you see, there were things as a 5 or 6-year-old I did not particularly want my mom and dad to know about. And then I would read those verses and I go, oh, shoot. You know. Jesus is talking about a judgment day when all that I wouldn't want you to know about me, you'll know. That's a devastating thought. I should think it would be to all of us. I can't even relate to such a terrible thing. And then this little voice in my head says, yes, you can, Bob. Remember the Christmas concert. Annual elementary school Christmas concert, big deal in our little town. Every September 8th or 9th, all 400 of us in the elementary school would begin preparing for the annual elementary school Christmas concert. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, we sang in September with the windows wide open and the mercury climbing near 98, 99 degrees. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. We fluted in October with the sweet smell of burning leaves beckoning beyond the playground. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We rooted in November like a cheer at the last home football game, and then it was December, and the pressure was on. You've got to sing, children, Miss Nagel would say, wiping the sweat from her brow. In 1 week, all of your parents shall be seated out here. And if you just stand on these risers and mumble as you are now, it is you children, look at me, look at me, look at me. It is you children who shall feel foolish, not I. This was a lie that Miss Nagel told us every year for motivational purposes. And it worked pretty well, especially for those of us who are younger, didn't know any better, you know. Of course, the exact opposite of what Miss Nagel said was actually the truth, right? Hey, if you are one of 400 mumblers, you do not feel foolish if you're mumbling. You feel foolish if you're singing. On the other hand, if you're the director of a 400-voice children's choir singing Chestnuts Roasting on the Nomenire, then you feel pretty foolish. You've got to sing, children, now look at me. You know, whenever Miss Nagel said look at me, I would feel these little giggle bubbles coming up. Because, you know, shoot. We were already looking at her. If Miss Nagel was in the room, folks, we were pretty much looking at her. I describe her to you as I remember her as a second grader, understanding, of course, that it's a different world down there. We forget what it's like to be like. I might see Miss Nagel today, and I might say, why, Miss Nagel, do you remember me, Bobby Stromberg? I was in your choir in the first, second, third, and fourth. But I don't think the conversation would look like this. Because Miss Nagel was to us a giant. Miss Nagel was the largest woman, or man for that matter, that any of us had ever seen. She wore her hair high on top of her head with a shape and texture not unlike that of spun cotton candy. She wore elegant black plastic pointy glasses with precious gems, emeralds, rubies, diamonds, the real thing right there in the corner. And at the base of her many chins, she wore a string of pearls that kind of looked like they connected her head to her trunk. You know. You've got to sing, children, now look at me. We were looking at her already. Now sing it like this. No possible way. Miss Nagel was an operatic wannabe, folks. She went to Juilliard School of Music for a week. There's no way we could sing it like she did, especially with laughter spraying out our second grade nostrils. So all of us felt very foolish. December 17th, seated in our classroom chairs, looking at our reflection in the window that usually went out to the playground, but of course it's dark now, so that was different, you know. And then somebody came to the door. I don't recall who precisely or specifically it was, but I do remember it was a woman, and she said, "It's time." And we stood, all of us, many long lines of nervous students walking down that long primary corridor, turning left by the Johns and down that long secondary corridor, down that low stairway and through the girls' locker room. There was some laughter. Up the stairway, directly across the center of the gymnasium, they put down the plastic stuff. Down the low stairway and through the boys' locker room, up the stairway, across the hall and through the cafeteria, down, I don't know,